We're back. Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy Monday start to this nice macro Sunday morning over here. As I prepared some charts talking about the very long term for Bitcoin. We'll also go over the short term as well, relative to that at least over the next maybe like 7 to 10 days, let's say. And other than that, I want to humbly request that if you find this content valuable or in some way meaningful, or if you even hate it, then please do consider liking and subscribing, and we can get right on with it. Starting off with the least lovely chart, which is going to be the Dixie chart over here. Again, we identified that this one was putting in a low last week, or yeah, I think this was last week. Yeah, over the past couple of weeks here, and you know, I really don't have too much to change about this now, as it does put in a low at these regions, you know, around the $100, $101 mark. It's very likely to take some time, just like it took some time to put in some highs over here. Going to take some time to put in some lows over here, and then ultimately, I would be looking at any sort of a rally, that basically fails to get back above the prior 108, 107-ish region as just that, a failed rally before continued downside. So I'll be looking for an overall macro consolidation right here. But I do want to address something right off the bat that, you know, I think a lot of people get a little bit too in the weeds with analyzing Dixie. Now, there certainly is at times an inverse relationship with risk on assets like Bitcoin, like stock market, like basically everything. But I do want to provide some insight as to some times where we just have not seen that true. In fact, some of the most egregious times in the past. Let's start off with May 2021 over here. You'll notice that May 2021, Dixie started to put in a major low, a macro low, we'd say, and worked its way up pretty much vertically over the next year and a half. And well, what was Bitcoin doing during that time? What was the stock market doing during that time? They were also making all-time highs. Kind of fucking crazy. What happened in this 2020 sector over here? Well, Dixie was down, traditional markets, Bitcoin was down as well. What about in 2018? Same thing. You know, again, having this massive downside movement right here, and then, you know, of course, putting the lows in 2019, having the same sort of rally. So ultimately, I do think that looking at these things as like a one-to-one relationship is misguided. It doesn't always work like that, but it does suggest that we're changing within the overall macro picture. So at least what I'm looking at right here, I look at this as likely a change in behavior for Bitcoin, as putting in, you know, it's not right. There's certainly not a bull market. Like, it's wrong to call it a bull market. It's also not necessarily a bear market right now as well. It's kind of like a transitionary time where you're going sideways. I think Jason Zenas actually explained this incredibly well. But basically, you know, you don't just go from like bull to bear or bear to bull. You go from bull to boring to bear, and bear to boring to bull, typically. So do expect this to take some time, but ultimately, you know, this would suggest that Bitcoin's going to be choppy, going to be sideways, and, you know, that's going to come with some downside, that's going to come with some upside, but ultimately, the main thing on the higher term timeframes is sideways, you know, kind of choppiness on the higher term timeframes, which can provide a lot of opportunity. There can be some humongous ranges going on here, but in the interim, in the short term, as this one does put in a nice low right here, probably going to equate towards a bit of a pullback, which we've been seeing on Bitcoin as of the past week. Anyways, I wanted to now go into the daily time frame, follow up on the setup on the volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. Volatility represented by this indicator, the BBWP indicator, getting down towards extreme lows, which are defined as 10 percentile or more. The expansion phase that naturally happens after that, that's mathematically programmed to happen after that, over the past like 5-6 years now, has led to an average move, if we can reference it over here, of about 20% over the course of about 11 days, again on average. Now, there's going to be some variance in there. That's why we look at the first standard deviation. But going back into it over here, I forgot to explain that the relationship between volatility expansion plus the direction of the stochastic oscillator is what gives the high fidelity or the high probability move in that direction. Now, this one's obviously already started to move to the downside. So this one is validated. This one's going to go up to a 70% strike rate, and then we can go reference the amount of days and the average return. So again, about 11 days on average we expect. Well, this one fired off on the 5th or 6th. I would say the 6th. I'd take the less obvious of that. So we're on day number 6 right now. 6 out of traditionally about 11 to 12. Bless you, sir. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but Elsa's having a coughing fit. Anyways, yes, so going back into this, you know, the average return based off of this has been about 20%. But because this signal has been at least I mean, this has been demonstrably weaker as we did not see full on compression below 10 percentile. Like it didn't spend that much time below 10 percentile like you saw over here. And typically speaking, the more compression that you do see at lower volatility levels leads to a greater expansion. So in this case, I wouldn't really be looking for like a humongous move off of this one. Maybe to the bottom side of the first standard deviation, I think is quite likely. But somewhere between there and the average is probably where I'd be looking towards. So between about 12.5% to 20% basically. So, putting this into perspective, what have we seen thus far off of the highs? Well, off of the highs, we've seen about an 11.5% move to the downside. So very, very close, actually. I would say that is reasonably close. 12.5% puts you about 21.2, 21.3 region. 15% puts you at about 20,500. And yeah, if it goes for the full 20%, that'd be like mid-19s. So, on the lower end, it's pretty damn close. With taking into context the time, the amount of days, not so close. We're about halfway through, so it is still risk to the downside. But here's the thing: the daily stochastic oscillator, the pivot is moving down rather rapidly. The current pivot for it to turn back onto the upside is above 22,500 on a daily closing basis. Don't think that happens today. Probably not even tomorrow as well. But as you can see, the lower that it does get, the more that number does move down. So it's more likely that if Bitcoin can kind of dig in here, trade sideways, maybe another spike to the downside closer to 21. But without any real continuation, this will naturally start to flip back up. And at that point, I would say, hey, that was the move, and I'd be looking for a reversion bounce as volatility kind of cools off. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So it's similar to last week, but like opposite. It's like it's a ticking time bomb in a way, in the sense that if you don't see continuation relatively soon, I'd say within these next few days, you're very likely to see a bounce. You're going to see the other factors take over, and that signal essentially, or that setup essentially be, done. Anyways, now putting this into a bit of a higher term time frame perspective, let me just double check that everything's all good over here. I think it is. We can go and reference something I haven't brought up in it's a real long time, baby. Real long time. One of them, the first one that we'll go over, is the pi cycle high and low indicator, which has accurately called pretty much all of the highs and lows thus far in Bitcoin's history. Now, the highs, I think, are a lot more visually clear. You can see the high right here before like a 60 to 70% correction, crash. You might fucking call that. It's a correction. Kind of a crash, man. Lost 70% of my shit. No problem, bro. Just a pullback, bro. It's just a pullback, bro. I just lost 70% of my fucking net worth. Just a pullback. No problem. No problem at all, sir. 70% of my fucking face. Yeah. 70% of the tip. It's like, that's what you should tell your significant other. It's like, it's all good. It's no problem. No problem at all. Just crashing right on in there. Fuck am I talking about right now? Anyways, yes, the pi cycle high. You can see right here, and more recently right here. Yes, it did trade a little bit higher, but hey, on a percentage basis, very fucking close to it. Has been pretty damn accurate in calling the highs. It also has been pretty damn accurate in calling the lows. Less iterations, to be fair. We have one pretty much on the low in 2015, two on the low in 2018, and then three over here. It actually crossed up in July. So if the FTX thing did not happen, that would have been the low for now, or presumably been the low for now. But the thing that I want to bring up here is that one, does that, similar to like the last one over here where it makes a slightly higher high and this one makes slightly lower low, does equate towards the next major macro low? Possibly yes. But two, in the past examples that we've seen, you can see that after the low is put in, that Bitcoin then, once it regains and tests that green moving average in here, and I think a little bit more obviously right here, is when is when things really start to get going. So in this case, the short EMA is going to be at where? 20,420 right now. A great number. Probably going to move up, or definitely going to move up at the end of this week. And by the way, it should really be done on the daily right here. But same sort of thing, basically 20,500 or so. So, does Bitcoin come down there maybe on like a CPI day and then bounce off of it? If you see that, that's probably going to be good. And that would also be within the context of the setup that we looked at over here. That'd be a 20% move off the highs. That's full on the average. So I think that's possible as well. But it does go, at least with what I'm looking at, in the sense that, as long as Bitcoin is basically above 20,000 bucks, I do still just look at this as as a pullback, and higher lows still available. Below 20,000, pretty fucking concerning, I'd say. At least for the blue laws. For the traders, doesn't fucking matter. Anyways, let's move on into the next chart. Another fundamental chart over here. This is the hash ribbons indicator. Just bringing this one back up. I always want to remind myself of the greater perspective of this thing. Not that I trade anything like this. I mean, this is more for like long-term investors. But what is the explanation of this? Well, the simple explanation is that anytime that this one prints a blue buy signature on the hash ribbons indicator, so it's a fundamentally based indicator based off, the hash ribbons, as the name suggests. Throughout the full 18 times that we've seen this in Bitcoin's history, there's been two prior times where it printed that blue buy signal and then actually traded lower. So that is to say that it has a very high probability that after printing it, it does not trade lower on a closing basis. On a wick basis, sure. On a closing basis, no. Than that level. And that fired off over here on the weekly specifically, by the way, because I know I'm going to get some messages like, Krown, it happened on the daily. Fuck that. No, doesn't matter. The weekly is what matters. Being it's a higher term time frame, obviously. That fired off on the girthy green dildo that we saw early January, in fact. So what does that mean? Well, it would imply that, Bitcoin doesn't close back down below about 17,000 bucks. Or if it does, you're probably looking at another black swan, or maybe it's World War III, maybe it's UFOs. I hear that there's a Tic Tac monster in the sky now, and send some missiles at it, because America. Fair enough. But yeah, just another thing, again, more in alignment with that. Taking it on to the last couple things over here, nothing's really changed with this. Monthly RSI divergence, hidden bullish divergence, I should say, which is how the last couple cycles have bottomed out. These green vertical bars kind of correlate towards that. And same thing with the monthly jewel as well, turning white over here. It has not, however, confirmed the next color. And in fact, with this last move to the downside, the color change from white to cyan, as you can see over here, is actually negated. So that would be, if we start to get towards the end of the month and it's still white, if it ain't white, it ain't. If it ain't white, that would be racist. But no, it's what I'm trying to say is if it's white, it's not right. Yeah, that's right, because it's 2023, so that's true. Hey. Nice. Good bot. Okay, cool. Yeah. So you'll see some hidden bullish evidence here as well. Again, few iterations on this. It's not like super confidence inducing, but good enough. It's the best that we can do. Same thing on the monthly stochastic. Again, just kind of reminding ourselves of the major areas here. Should denote that the current monthly pivot is just below 17,000 bucks. So again, that's that's not really helpful. It's like, hey, if Bitcoin goes below 17,000 bucks, it's kind of fucked. It's a little bit too late. But again, we're talking about the long term here. At that point, yeah, sure, 12,000, 10,000, whatever the fuck, go for it, man. But still, remains the upside. And again, all of the crosses that we have seen within this critical region over here, have correlated with macro lows before. And in fact, if we were to take a statistical measurement of the first move off of those lows from that region, again, we have three prior ones, it's been like an average of about 250% off the lows. So that would be, pretty nice. Again, 3 times is not like great, but that would still imply that, over the course of the next few months, maybe until the first half of the year, probably more upside. So I know that sounds kind of crazy within the current context of things, as well. Bitcoin pulled back 15% after going up fucking 50%. It's time to panic, man. It's time to panic. So, just want to put things in perspective right there, as far as what that's suggesting, and do with that as you will. Other than that, I want to once again shill good old Bybit. They got their promotion going on to get wrecked there with 0% fee, so at least you don't pay the fee. So fair enough. There is a link in the description below. As always, make sure that's a good decision for yourself. Don't just fucking go into it because it's on this channel. What else? Yeah, that's it. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.